The 2023 season is crucial for several drivers on the F1 grid. But for me, there are three drivers in particular that have been in the sport for a while that have a critical year ahead of them. And if they don't perform well, they might be leaving the sport altogether. Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg is returning to the F1 grid in 2023. The driver that's been a reliable reserve for a few years during COVID could become a permanent addition to the grid with Haas. For me, this appointment has been made on the condition that he's able to perform right away. Hulkenberg is 35 years old and so isn't exactly at an early stage in his career, and so Haas expect him to be quick out of the box just as Kevin Magnussen was in 2022 when he stepped in last minute. For Haas, this means that their driver lineup consists of two drivers at a similar stage in their career. This is the same sort of position that they had in 2020 with Romain Grosjean and Magnussen together. Back then, the team were openly frustrated with their drivers and made comments about their development feedback and whether they were really contributing to the development of the car. This is something that they then threw away completely as they replaced them with a pair of rookies, though this was primarily a financially driven decision. So to go back towards a familiar, more experienced pairing, I think Haas have revealed two things. Number one is the fact that they're in a better position financially than they've been in the past. The budget cap has likely helped this, and also their new title sponsorship from MoneyGram. The second thing that this driver appointment reveals is the fact that they believe that having Schumacher in the team last year was holding them back. There's no denying that Schumacher had a rocky time in Formula 1 up to this point. His 2 seasons with Haas were difficult, and the driver made some significant and costly errors. Whilst the German driver was a positive from a commercial perspective, he was lacking when it came to consistent pace on track. But while he definitely struggled, he's also developed significantly alongside an experienced driver in Kevin Magnussen. At times, Schumacher was equally as fast and even occasionally ahead of the Dane. So for Hulkenberg, he needs to step into this seat and immediately perform better than Schumacher has. He needs to be pushing Magnussen every single race and make fewer costly mistakes. I expect he'll be able to do this, but given his age, there isn't much long-term ambition for Haas with this driver pair. If he doesn't achieve the right results though, I expect Hulkenberg's return to the sport may be short-lived. Before we take a look at the next driver, I want to take a moment to ask you to subscribe to Behind the Drive. We're getting ready for the new season with lots of opinion content to come, so make sure to subscribe to not miss out on any of the videos. Lewis Hamilton. The next driver with a point to prove in 2023 is Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has achieved the most of any driver in Formula 1, so there's no denying his ability and talent. However, his 2022 season was probably one to forget. The Mercedes driver had a new teammate in George Russell and was beaten over the course of the year for the first time since 2016 when he was beaten by Nico Rosberg. Not only this, but Hamilton's record of achieving a pole position and race win in every season he's competed in are now over, something that George Russell did achieve in 2022. This shows that while the car was capable of achieving such results, it was Russell that got the car over the line ahead of Hamilton, and this is where I think the results from last season are very significant for the British world champion. Throughout Hamilton's career, he's been relied on to achieve the best results and be the team leader. Particularly over his previous 5 seasons alongside Valtteri Bottas, he was the one that would get the majority of the race wins and pole positions. But the 2022 season has thrown Hamilton's team leader position into doubt. It's clear that Hamilton will have a seat on the F1 grid for as long as he wants one, and perhaps he has unfinished business in the sport following the 2021 title fight that he lost to Max Verstappen. However, if he can't beat his teammate, then that throws his future, at least with Mercedes, into doubt. The dynamic between Hamilton and Russell will be something that's worth watching throughout the early part of the 2023 season, as the drivers try to establish themselves at the top. And if the Mercedes car is much more competitive at the start of the season, then this battle could be very fascinating indeed. In 2022, it was reported that Hamilton sacrificed his setups and took more sensors on board to support the team's development. I doubt we'll ever hear the full truth on this piece, and I think there'll always be a question mark over the extent to which this testing happened. However, if it is true, then I think that makes 2023 even more important for Hamilton. The reason he will have wanted to invest the time into helping Mercedes develop this car is to give himself another chance at achieving his 8th world title. While this may seem unlikely with the dominance of Red Bull, I think Hamilton is going to want to reassert himself at the top of the Mercedes pecking order regardless. So going into this year, I think it's going to be fascinating to watch this teammate battle at Mercedes. Russell will be on a high after a strong 2022 season where he achieved some great results and managed to get his first race win under his belt. With that in mind, Russell may go from strength to strength and really establish himself at the top of the team. Hamilton has his point to prove as well, and so if these two find themselves in a regular fight for the race wins or podiums, then their teammate relationship will inevitably be tested. For me, the elephant in the room at Mercedes is the fact that their driver pairing consists of two top drivers, one of which has helped the team dominate the sport for several years, while the other is the future of that team. So if push comes to shove and Mercedes need to directly manage these two drivers, it'll be fascinating to see which decision they take. Ultimately, it could be the beginning of the end for Hamilton in Mercedes if things don't go well in 2023. Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly has moved away from the AlphaTauri team for the first time since his promotion to Red Bull back in 2019. Admittedly, a lot has changed since that promotion, but the cloud over Gasly still remains. Back in 2019, Gasly struggled to adapt to his new car, and he found himself well behind Verstappen. Since then, the new aerodynamic regulations have been introduced, which means it will be new for Gasly once again. Last season, Gasly didn't necessarily adapt as well as we might have expected from a driver with his level of experience. The gap between him and his teammate was reduced, but it was important to note that the team as a whole went backwards, meaning the gaps are relative. However, it wasn't the same type of dominant Gasly that we've become used to in the AlphaTauri setup, and perhaps an element of this is the fact that he struggled with the new cars in 2022. Either way, there's a doubt over Gasly's adaptability, and as we've seen with Daniel Ricciardo, if you fail to adapt to your car in Formula 1, then you'll soon be left without a seat on the grid at all. Gasly's move to Alpine makes a lot of sense though. He's a French driver and he creates an all-French pairing at that team. Similarly, it's a good step for him to move away from the Red Bull-owned setups. He's gone from a team that came 9th in 2022 to a team that came 4th, so he's clearly taking a step up the order. And with that will come the expectation. He's taking over a seat left vacant by Fernando Alonso, and realistically those are some big shoes to fill. Alonso is a talented driver, and while he didn't beat Esteban Ocon last year, I believe he would have come out on top if it wasn't for reliability challenges. Similarly, Esteban Ocon won't be an easy teammate for Gasly to beat. The pair know each other well, having come through the karting ranks together as juniors, and they've had a bitter rivalry in the past. Ocon has been with that team for 3 years now and is seen as a reliable driver as he's been rewarded with a long-term contract with Alpine. I expect Gasly will do well and will be able to compete with Ocon as he's a talented driver, and moving away from the Red Bull-owned seats will probably be good for him as he tries to establish himself on the grid as a more independent driver. If Gasly fails to deliver though, he's at risk of having a short stint outside of the AlphaTauri seats. For me, if he doesn't deliver in 2023, then there's a decent chance that he'll lose his seat, and I don't see him having a realistic return to the F1 grid if that ends up being the case. So undoubtedly, the 2023 season is absolutely critical for Gasly in establishing himself as a top driver in Formula 1. So those are my top 3 drivers with points to prove in 2023. Hulkenberg, Hamilton and Gasly have a lot to achieve this season, and we'll be keeping an eye on how they get on throughout the year on this channel. So make sure to subscribe to Behind the Drive to find out more. And if you want to learn more about Gasly's relationship with Ocon, then watch this video next.